right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the most important conversations on leadership. I'm joined again by my colleague, Dan Silberberg. Dan, today we are talking about why does it matter to be authentically who you are as a leader? And I want to actually turn it over to you to kick us off here. I mean, this seems like a very esoteric thing that at least people will relate to it as esoteric initially when hearing it. Like, what do you mean who I am? It's about getting things done. It's about action. It's, about all the things we typically think about in the sort of normal parlance of leadership out in the culture. But because we relate to talking about who someone authentically is as being sort of this esoterical thing, it's the reason why we struggle so much in leadership because we don't get to the root. And I know that's something that you and I share, which is, let's get to the root of the issue here. You're talking about leadership. You're talking about guiding people. You're talking about being able to make decisions. Ultimately, you're talking about being able to be creative enough to see the decisions or the options available to you. There's so much we're going to talk about on this regular podcast that you and I are doing right now. But let's start, on our last episode, we covered a whole smattering of stuff. Let's drill into the essence. Let's start with the source, and the source is who you are. So share with me your thoughts on why does that matter? I'm so busy as a leader. I got so many things to do. I've got people to take care of. I've got demands. I've got outcomes I'm supposed to produce. I don't have time to think about who I am. And that's when I turn it over to you.
Awesome. So, as you know, I have lots of heroes, and one of my heroes is Carl Jung. And he said the privilege of a lifetime is to be who you actually are. They've done study after study after study. The biggest regret on a person's deathbed is I wish I was more who I really was. And so within that, what that signals for me and in my own journey is the yearning to be seen and to be known for who I am unconditionally. So when you look at an organization, just take a look at the level of politics to how the company operates. The higher the level of politics, the less authenticity is really allowed in the system. So why do we want to be more authentic? When you as a leader are authentic, what it does is it makes you trustworthy, right? People know that you actually are saying what you mean. That creates psychological safety. That's the number one issue for an enterprise to thrive, is to what level and what degree do you have a psychologically safe environment? Part of the element of psychological safety is I am allowed to show up to be who I am and share my highest vision and truth. Not that it's dogma, but when I'm authentic, I'm trustworthy, I am more approachable. I will be more willing to be vulnerable. Why do I want to be vulnerable? Try and be innovative. Try and be prolific. Try and be artistic when you have shut down your vulnerability and you're encased in this mask. So one of the things in my own journey is a thing called a love sponge. Most people play, if you had a sponge that was this big, most people play in the center where it's safe, and there's the guardrails. But there's all these other parts that don't get watered. And so I don't thrive for who I actually am. So what happens why is it so hard to be authentic? Well, take a look at mom, take a look at family belief, take a look at early education principles, spiritual principles if they're in the family, and then take a look at the culture norm. Take a look at institutional norm and political norm. There are so many things coming at us to fit in, to find ourselves to be acceptable, right? But here's the thing. If I'm not being authentic and you say, Dan, we're the best of friends, do you know what I'm saying? I don't think so, because you don't really know me. So if I had the question of, if you really knew me, fill in the blank.
Right.
This is an opportunity for authenticity. The flip side of that coin is if you really knew me with this, and this, you'd never be my friend. So I'd better wear the mask,
Right.
right?
Right.
When we're wearing a mask and we're not authentic, we are creating in our bodies, right? The energy in our body goes to resistance, it goes to hiding. That's an enormous amount of creativity, of artistry, of wanting to show up in the world. And somehow, as people get older, it dawns on them, I'm just going to be who I am. This should start early in life. Yes, you should be acceptable. Yes, you need to fit in. Yes, you don't want to be abandoned, but you can't be abandoned by others. You can be abandoned by yourself.
Right.
Yeah. If you don't like me, there are 5 other people out there who will. So
Right.
if I'm authentic, my energy, vibration, frequency will actually bring people to me in a community where I'm accepted. Isn't that really what we're all looking for?
Yeah, and now there's a couple things that come to mind on this. So there was a study that was done, which is quite fascinating. It found that 85% of our thoughts in a given day um, lean negative. Okay, so our brain, as we know, is its primary directive until trained, by the way, until mastered otherwise. Okay, so an untrained, unmastered mind, the primary directive is survival.
Right.
And so the reason there's a proclivity of the brain to sway negative in terms of seeing the world that through that lens is because it's looking for risk. We're always looking for risk that is going to make it difficult for us to survive. And then the second part to the study found that 95% of the thoughts that we have the day before, if 85% of 100% of our thoughts are negative and 95% of the thoughts we had yesterday we're having today and we're going to have tomorrow, you can see very quickly how for many leaders now, being human beings, they're trapped in that same mechanic.
Yep.
They don't have to be. It's a choice. Once you become aware of it, and anyone listening and watching, now you're aware. So you're choosing to stay there, right? If you want to figure out how to get out of that, that's something Dan and I can help you with. But anyway, so this negativity has us, and one of the things that we become that we view through a negative lens is, will someone accept me or see my faults and relate to me as a faulty, weak, not powerful leader? And so what we look for is evidence out in the culture of, well, what is a leader? Who do I have to be, even if it's inauthentic to me? Who do I have to be to please people, to check the boxes? It's crazy. It's a neurosis that we have in our society when you really think about it, right? But we become these people pleasers, and because human beings are very socially just naturally social creatures that want to be liked and accepted by the group, it's a survival thing. If you're ostracized by the group, evolutionary speaking, that's a threat to your survival.
Right.
And so leaders fall into this very human dynamic of needing to please other people. But here's the catch. We're all doing it to each other. It's not like there's someone who has figured it out. They're trying to please you as much as you're trying to please them. And it's crazy making. So coming back to what you were just saying, you were talking about trust and how by being authentic, it allows other people to trust you. But equally important, if not more important, is the trust you learn to develop of yourself, trust of self, right? And so the more you lean into and operate from an authentic place for you, and it requires doing a bit of the self-discovery to even figure out, who am I authentically? Because all of us, when we're 4 and 5 years old, whatever our parents say, whatever the community of our friends, family community are saying, we just take it in as truth. We have nothing else to base it on. So as a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, if my mom says I'm good or bad, it's true. Whatever they say is good. Whatever I'm picking up around me is the truth. So we develop this conditioning, and now you're a 48 or 49-year-old leader still operating with 4-year-old conditioning that's been driving all of your choices and decisions in most of your life in terms of what you believe about yourself. And this leads to the midlife crisis phenomenon, right? The midlife crisis phenomenon is simply your authentic self finally breaking through and saying, hello there, this life you've created is not you,
Right. Yeah.
right? And you have a choice of either putting the lid on it, ignoring it, or leaning into it and getting really curious and finally developing yourself as a person of power. Power comes from authenticity. Power comes from trust of self. Power comes from leaning into your creative potential. All of that is buried under your conditioning until it's not.
Right. So this is beautiful. So this negativity bias that you're describing, the amygdala is the part of the brain that in caveman days was the survival mechanism, because if not, you're eaten by the tigers.
Right.
Neocortex frontal lobe here, that was recently developed. So your amygdala, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, is 20,000 times more powerful. But when it's operational and you are now releasing cortisol, what happens is this shuts down and you now start making bad choices, right? And then you describe this person who's got these 85% of thoughts. Yesterday is the same as today, is the same as today, is the same as today. That is when someone says, tell me about your personality. That's your 85% of thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to
95. 85% of thoughts are negative, but 95 of our thoughts are repeated every day. 95%. That's almost 100.
Right. So the brain works in pattern. So every time you see something new, unless you raise your consciousness, unless you become more self-aware, unless you're more operating in the present moment, your brain created the experience of that, and it wasn't the experience at all.
That's right.
Right. So, and then this idea of early childhood, we are in a theta brainwave state between 2 and 10. And if you know how you hear children, they can learn 3 languages in 5 minutes. That's how capable they are. Because in theta, whatever gets downloaded, it's like hypnosis is theta.
That's right. Yeah.
So it becomes accepted. So now what happens is that your brain is looking to reinforce whatever those beliefs are. So part of the training of becoming an ontological leader, an authentic leader, a self-aware leader, is bringing these beliefs from childhood to consciousness. It's not like they're hidden and you can't find them ever. Tell me 3 of your earliest experiences. That will tell us a lot about who your beliefs are. Tell us mom's favorite. Tell us dad's favorite. Tell us your birth order. Tell us your story. Answer the question, who am I? What can the world expect from you, and what can you expect from the world? Those types of self-reflective questions give you insights. So, for example, talking with a young man, I said, tell me 3 of your earliest experiences. Well, the safest place for me was locked in my bedroom, looking out the picture window into the forest where I could be by myself. Well, that could be just a story, but this is a boy who doesn't see the world as safe. This is a boy who wants to become invisible. This is a boy, and you can go through these kinds of things, right? Another one, talking to a young lady, I said, who's dad's favorite? Because she had a brother. Oh, I am by far. Interesting. Tell me more about that. Every Saturday, he and I would sit in his library from 2 to 5 p.m. And I'm thinking, this is really good because the dad is the one who instills real self-esteem in a girl. What'd you all talk about? Oh, we never talked. I just sat there for 3 hours. So now in a relationship with men, I don't have a voice. I might be invisible. I'm not seen, right? Where is my value in this? So these early things, these are ways of having the ability to uncover a belief. So if you take a look at it, you have a thought. So the thought is, I'm going to do this thing with Chad today, this podcast. Well, now my behavior is I've got to give him 50% of the time.
Mm.
So I'm going to choose to talk only 50% of the time, even though today
Which
maybe
is not true, by the way.
right? Maybe I should
Yeah.
talk 65 and he should talk 35.
Yeah.
That thought to the behavior, which creates a choice, your choice creates the experience that you have. Your experience creates chemical reaction
Mm-hmm.
that creates an emotion. That chemical creates
Mm-hmm.
the emotion of it's fun to be with Chad. I hate being with Chad. Chad's
Mm-hmm.
abusive. Chad's dominating. Chad takes too much talk time, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then that creates a memory. And the
Yeah.
memory is every time I'm with Chad, I'm underserved, right? But that's not true. That's just how it got. And the more I reinforce that, every time you speak now, I go, yep, he's dominating again. You're
Mm-hmm.
not dominating at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard, it's almost impossible to figure all of this out on your own.
Right.
That's where having these kinds of opportunities to work with coaches and people who've done a lot of work who can sense these things and guide, right? I really look at what we end up doing as guiding.
Yeah.
It's the aha moment and flow that you discovered. The transformational moments are yours. I don't deliver them. We don't deliver them.
Yeah.
You bring them forward. And the
Yeah.
more of that you do, it's self-fulfilling to the positive.
Yeah. Yeah. In our TMIC design lab methodology, that is well said. I mean, we are not consultants. We are facilitators and curators of an experience or a process through which the people we work with do all the work. They do all the discovery. They do all the uncovering. They do all the creating. We provide the container for that work to occur. And when you think about it, Dan, there aren't many containers in the world where you are truly able and allowed to drop all of that conditioning, drop all of that superficial stuff, and truly drop into, yeah, who am I? And who would or what would that person create in the world? And as it pertains to leadership, what do I want to create in the world? What do I want to lead people into and why? And who am I authentically being in this experience so that it's all connected? You know, Gandhi said, I love this quote. He said, when what you think and what you say and what you do align, that is happiness.
Mm.
When you whatever you when you now think about how many people think one thing, say another, say one thing, do another, right? And the doing is usually twisted and oriented towards gaining some kind of validation. You can't be an effective leader if that's the process you're going through.
Right.
You're thinking one thing, you're saying another, because the incongruence, the inauthenticity, like what you're saying, is power destroying. It diminishes your personal power
Yeah.
because deep down, you know it's not true. You know that's not you, right? You're never powerful when you don't believe what you are doing and saying.
Right.
There's no power in that. And and this one of the things we're talking about right now, and so some of the words we're going to use, everyone in this podcast, you know, I invite you to hear them fresh and anew because you may have had experience with some of these words. Words are very limited, you know, with a single word, it can have multiple meanings because it's the best we've got. Language is, you know, by nature, they're limiting. There's only so many words to articulate an experience. And those experiences are usually at the level of energetics. We're talking about energetics here. So your energy is high or low depending on the level of congruence with your authenticity. And so what you're talking about today, Dan, is how to, as a leader, access that authentic self. Put another way, what you're really saying is, how do I access my true power and my true nature which is access through authenticity, so that I can be a more effective leader in the world. And what I'm creating as a leader in the world aligns with who I am.
Yeah. So when you look at it, a couple of things come up. One is 73% of top performers have imposter syndrome. I, like Chris Rock, would find that extremely funny for a couple of reasons. One, the only people who have imposter syndrome are really talented, high-performing people. Average people don't worry about imposter syndrome, never even occurred to them.
Yeah.
So if we dig underneath, what is imposter syndrome? It is the fear that I will be found out. Okay. Found out about what? Found out that you don't have the answer to everything because you're not supposed to. What?
Yeah.
Found out that you make mistakes, but you're not allowed. Found out that you took a risk and it didn't work out, and now people think less of you. Found out, again, fill in the blank. It takes away our humanity, right? So how do we create an environment where, another one of my heroes is Carl Rogers. And what he said is, we all have the yearning to be accurately seen in the here and now with positive regard, consistently and unconditionally. So if you could show up in a psychologically safe place where people were just excited about you, not about outcome, not about achievement, but instead of achievement, if we said we're going to take that token away and we're now going to reward who is being the most authentic, how would that shift the culture? How would that shift outcome? How would that shift participation? How would that shift you stepping into your power, right? I believe that AI is going to be the inflection point. It's going to create that opportunity, because for leaders today who are totally left brain, achievement to outcome, we don't need you anymore. AI is that. I was looking at workflows the other day, 12 touch points. So I need all these people to do all the work. I saw the same workflow, 2 touch points with AI, 10 of them disappeared. That doesn't mean 10 people disappeared. It means 10 people are going to move from left brain to right brain. We talk about that a lot. So now, if you want to be creative, if you want to be generating, if you want to think possibility, if you want to think quantum, limitless, right? You can't do that when you're tapped down inauthentically. There's too many risks in that. I think we're seeing it in surveillance. I think we're seeing it in global domination governments. I think this shift is coming. And I believe that the work that we're doing, that if you're one of the early adopters, just like in technology, your hockey stick to growth is going to be amazing. And I know from my own work that the people who do this work, and it's risky, it takes courage, you need to be brave, you need to be willing to be vulnerable, those people end up more approachable, more trustworthy, given more of the high level things within an enterprise, but take it beyond the enterprise, because we're also talking about architecting a spectacular life. And if you're going to have this spectacular life, you're not authentic at home and inauthentic at work.
Right.
It's not a switch. It doesn't work like that. Who you are, how you show up, who you're being, right? The other thing is, when you're inauthentic, you're in scarcity, not trusting, and the biggest impact, it impacts your aliveness, right? When we're talking on here, I sense how alive we are. I don't know if we're making the right thing. I don't know if it's a mistake. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We're being authentic in this moment.
So the aliveness, when you're in this trust and out of scarcity and negativity, and your aliveness comes forward, the emotion of fear flips to joy.
Yeah.
That's a whole different chemical reaction, right? The next level up is, there's a regressive pole of hunger, a progressive role of affirmation. If I can affirm myself and not worry about my hunger to be affirmed external, I have more play within me. Now I have more play, more aliveness, reduction of anger, more in control, no burnout. I don't burn out when I'm authentic.
No,
I
no.
control, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Burnout is fake. It's all about fraud and fake, out
Yeah.
of control.
That's the source of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to address something you just said that I think is really interesting. I'm just pulling this up. So this is Reuters. Okay. Now, this isn't a political show, but politics, of which I got my undergrad degree in political science. And a lot of people are like, well, what do you use that for? And I said, let me reframe it for you. Politics is the study of human power dynamics. So I effectively got my degree in power. Okay. So there's another way to think about it. So we're not going to get into politics, but there's something we can learn and apply to this conversation. So Reuters, this was I guess in the springtime. It says this is the headline. It says despair makes young men more conservative ahead of US election polls show. Okay, that's the headline. The thing that stood out for me with this is despair. You were talking about scarcity, fear. Okay, this is all part of the same sort of milieu. Despair makes, and it's not just young men, that's what they're looking at in the poll, but it's just men or women, makes people more conservative. I was thinking about this the other day because if you think about the word conserve, and I want to relate this to leadership in a second, to conserve is to retract, to conserve is to shrink. To conserve is to hedge. Underneath the impulse to conserve is what you were just talking about: scarcity, lack, not enough, risk, right? You know, I've been looking at this. Our society, you look at any country in the Western world, let's just keep it focused there. When times are good, when people are making money, there is an expansion of creativity and liberal ideas because the scarcity and the fear and the risk is not running the show.
Right.
Right. So people expand when they feel a sense of security, and they contract when they feel that their security is at risk. This is just sort of a natural, this is energetics. So you have conserving coming from fear, scarcity, or you have expansion. You know, it's like anyone can do whatever they want, live your best life when we're all at peace and making money and feeling good about things. And as soon as things start to feel a little scary, it's like, oh no, we need to control all of this stuff, right? And we compress it down. And so we do that in our own life as leaders. So as a leader, if, to your point, if you're coming from a place of scarcity, not enough, people are judging me, people are criticizing me, that's another version of that fear and scarcity. You're going to make poor decisions because you're so myopic in terms of what options you believe are available.
Right.
You're not expansive in your thinking, expansive in your energy, expansive in what's possible. That takes on the energy of play and creativity, and anything is possible. Now, here's the thing. Everyone listening, and all of us as individuals, we have a choice every single day when we get up. As a leader, you have a choice. Are you going to operate from fear and scarcity and conserve and contract and you know, operate from this place of fear and angst and all of that? You know, that's going to affect your energy. There's no power in that. You don't trust people, you don't trust yourself, you don't trust the circumstance. So you're in a tight little ball. And a lot of leaders find themselves in that place today. And what we're advocating for is, by knowing yourself, you no longer rely on the variables out there from which to get your trust.
Right.
You trust yourself because you know yourself. And when you are standing in trust and not fear, your leadership can be expansive. Your ideas can be creative. You can approach life playfully. And in that is power.
Yeah, that's really good. So what's coming up for me is, how do I know where I'm in? How do I know what state I'm in? And that brings me into somatic training. how aware am I in my body?
Mm.
So what you just described, I'm more clenched in. I'm not taking up space. Have you seen people walk in a
Yeah.
room and they take up, they know how to take space. They
Yeah.
know how
Yeah.
to be present. They know
Yeah.
how, and what you're describing is all of a sudden I notice my breathing is shallow. Oh, well, that's interesting. So
Hmm.
now I can say, oh, all right, let's take a couple of deep breaths and I'll reset from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So a
Hmm.
part of this. And what's great about this work, it's never solved. It's not
Hmm.
that, okay, I realized I was in scarcity. Now I'm in abundance. I'll never be in scarcity again. That's
No.
not the game.
Yeah.
The game is I'm always in the continuum, but where am I? How
Hmm.
is it affecting me?
Hmm.
Oh, my pulse, I'm looking at my Fitbit. Instead of 53 beats a minute, it's 75.
Hmm.
Okay, I might want to take 30 seconds and take a couple of breaths and be more in control again,
Hmm.
right? So this is all a part of, meditation. How much am I dependent on having the right car, the right house, the trophy wife, all of the appearances, and yet then we all have this gnawing inside.
Hmm.
Somehow I have all of that. So what a lot of men, they have affairs, they blow up the marriage, they do all kinds of crazy things, not because they're trying to hurt someone, they're
Hmm.
trying to fill the void.
Hmm.
So this is really, I think, the value too. I just think it's bigger than leadership. When I hear leadership, it exists in the context of an enterprise. And I think what we're trying to say to an audience is who you are as a leader is the best of who you are as a human being.
Right.
And it hits every element of your life. It hits your relationship at home with your kids, spouse, partner. It may hit with the people in your community. It may hit wider in the world, depending on, what you're trying to do. And and so this is, I think, the value. It's hard to kind of quantify it. But the
Hmm.
other thing is there are levels of consciousness. When
Hmm.
you are feeling extremely loving, you have a spouse, partner, and you see them and you just, I am so happy to see you, your consciousness level, your vibration level is up here.
Hmm.
If I'm in shame, my consciousness level is down here, and I have very little ability to do much of anything. And this is that idea of why am I always thinking about the past?
Right.
So one of the things with my men's thing, um, call 3 of your friends and ask them to tell you why they think you're cool. Just that question. That's ridiculous. I don't have 3 friends. I'm not doing that. That would be embarrassing. All that bullshit that goes on here. Yeah,
Mm.
do it. See,
Hmm.
that's the chasm of
Hmm.
taking the risk to find out that your friends think you are really cool. So I'm
Yeah.
on with this guy, and he's like, well, I'm not really comfortable doing that, and blah, 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 and all of the excuses. And so tell me, at what point did someone tell you that you weren't enough, that you weren't worthy, that you weren't deserving? And the guy was like, well, that's it. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I'm practiced at this. I do this for a living every once in a while, right? And then we got deeper. And then to have him be seen for his gift and genius, you will know if you are being accurately seen when tears start flowing.
Right. Yeah.
That's something for men and guys, particularly. I don't ever want to show that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely an icebreaker that is essential to get to authenticity and get in the game in a really big way. So if you like gladiator style, this can be a gladiator event in the theater. And the
Mm.
enemy is not the tiger, it's your own limiting belief.
Yeah. 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 No, well said. And what we talk about in the Leader by Design Lab work that you and I are doing, using the Design Lab method, and then a lot of the ontological work that you and I both share and do. And maybe we go by different names, but it's irrelevant because it's the same thing. Again, sort of the limitation of words. I always say to people, first of all, I believe all people can be leaders. It doesn't need to be a word relegated to the enterprise world, although we do tend to relate to it that way. But I want to dispel that actually, because we're all leaders of our own life. But what does it mean to be a leader? For me, it means to be a creator, fundamentally, to create the conditions of possibility for myself and others, to take responsibility, or like I like to play with the word responsibility because most people hear the word responsibility through the lens of blame, like I'm to blame, I'm responsible. But actually, it's the way I look at it is you're able to respond, like response able. My ability to respond to the things that are going on in life is highly amplified when I'm not coming from fear and I'm leaning into creativity and creativity in action, otherwise known as play, and being playful, being open to possibility, being at choice versus reducing everything to a binary, which is what happens when we make a decision. Decision actually, as a word, comes from the concept of cutting off. So to cut off possibility, it's decisive. It's not this, it's that, but you're always in a binary. When you're at choice, you're in a playful state, and you know that you can make a choice and you can retract that choice and make a different choice. And in our language, we look at that as, oh, so you failed. You made this choice. It didn't work out. So now you're making another choice. So again, the brain goes negative. Oh, you're failed. Nothing wrong with learning. When we're in a state of play, we're trying, we're prototyping, we're exploring. And this is what kids naturally do until they're told, don't fail. And
Mhm.
suddenly our world shrinks. And it's like, I've got to make the right decision. So now I'm in a binary. Otherwise, people will judge me. People will look at me as a failure and they won't trust me. So again, this all comes down to trust of self and the power that you have innately, all of us have, to be creators of our own life and to create the conditions of a life that align with myself and create possibility for my community. Whether your community is an enterprise, whether it's your family, whether it's your friends, your wider community, your friends and your acquaintances, you're a leader if you're behaving this way, right? So I always look at it like everyone can be a leader, but to do that, coming back to what we started with today, you have to tap into who you are authentically, manage your energy, manage your power. And I believe that the most authentic state for every human being to be in is that of creator, where we're taking responsibility for our emotions, for our thoughts. We're able to respond to those things. And we're not in, so again, you were talking about sympathetic versus parasympathetic. You can't respond, you can only react
Right.
when the cortisol's flowing and you're in a stress state. And the world looks like a binary at that point.
Yeah. So when you're a creator, you're in flow and you're in the present. So again, there's a regressive pole and a progressive pole. The regressive pole is reactivity, and the
Yeah.
progressive pole is intention. So how much of my life am I living through intention? I can't live in intention inauthentically.
No.
Well, I can be inauthentic, and that's not what I'm intending. And I like to say to people, if you want to know the life you intended, look at the life you have.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
your intention.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be that. It can be something different. Now, this idea of you can be a leader, I want to put that sort of to rest. Everyone is a leader. And the question is, to what are you leading?
Yeah.
I'm leading to be codependent. I'm leading to be a people pleaser. I'm leading to be a domination. I'm leading to be, again, these fill in the blanks. We are
Mm-hmm.
all leading all the time.
Mm-hmm.
My job as a leader is, I looked at it from a family. My job as a leader is to figure out the gift, genius, and artistry within you, and then to shine a light on a path that will take you to become the best of who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
If I could do that in an enterprise, the ability to scale, the ability to have great product, the ability to have ambassadors and influencers and would be exponential.
Yeah.
Because again, we're pure energy. We attract what we are.
Yeah.
If we're the creator, if we're in joy, if we're in opportunity and limitless possibility and quantum thinking, that's who we're going to acquire. That's who's going to come to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just think this is a fascinating and opening salvo. And having worked with 20,000 men at this point, it's been the privilege of a lifetime to be able, because when I'm doing my work with them, I'm doing my work with me.
Absolutely.
As we all do this work, it doesn't matter who's talking.
No.
We're all working at the same time. And to have a community of people who are dedicated and committed to architecting a spectacular life, that's the privilege.
Yeah, well said. And yes, we are all leaders. We are, and we are always also creators all the time, whether we realize it or not, is the question, right? So a lot of, I agree with what you said, that the life, you want to know what you intended, look at the life you had, you intended that because you created that. And as a creator, we are always creating. Most people don't realize that they're a creator. And so they're looking outside of themselves to blame circumstances or people or situations for why they have what they have. But as I was saying to a friend of mine the other day, who's a very, very well-respected and successful investment banker, and he's gone through his own transformation as a creator leader. And he's been starting to meditate over the last year. He's been doing yoga for the last several years, and he's been on this journey. And he says, there are some people who used to be in my life that just aren't there anymore. Or there's people that are in my life that I'm struggling to be with, And I said, I'm going to make it real simple for you. I said, have you ever heard the saying, birds of a feather flock together? And he says, yeah. And I said, it's energy, man. The energy that you are exhibiting and putting out, who you have become, is making it intolerable for some people to share space with you anymore. And you're attracting new people into the space. And so don't get attached to what used to be. You're elevating your energy, you're elevating your awareness, you're a new intention for who you are committed to being as a creator of the life you're now creating. And that's going to invite and attract new people that share that energy. Birds of a feather flock together. And he was like, that simple little statement, he was like, oh my gosh, he was like, he gave me, we were sitting down having lunch and he cheers me. He's like, that is the best thing I've heard all year. He was just really, because it provided that moment of clarity for him, because I think some people sit in this shame. And so anyway, Dan, as usual, I think I'll give you the last word here in our last minute on this episode, but there's so much for us to cover. I mean, again, we've unpacked the Pandora's box here. So
you're pushing a car, it lands in front of a hotel, and you find out you're bankrupt. Where are you? Tune in next week and we'll give you the answer. Or do you want the answer now?
No, let's leave it. Let's leave it as a cliffhanger.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're in a car, you land at a hotel, you get out of the car, and you find you're bankrupt. Where are you? That riddle is how to be a better leader.
Well, let's give them the answer on our next episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the most important conversations on leadership. And we're going to be sharing about mine and Dan's program, Leader by Design, and the Leader by Design Lab. But we'll get into that on a future episode. Until then, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at TMICglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.